Hey everybody, this is Volen in Pursuit of Art. I want to talk to you today about learning. I think we're all taught to learn in a very similar way, and it's a way that's also geared towards knowing of things, getting a very shallow exposure, just an introduction basically to an idea, rather than how to learn skills, how to become a high level performer or even a performer of any sort. When you go through school, when you go through 10, 12 plus years of learning a certain way, getting praised for it, and then kind of essentially have everyone around you label that that thing that you're doing at school as learning, you kind of get the idea that that's all that there is when it comes to learning. And when you actually are trying to transition from school to then building, let's say, a skill of some sort and becoming a performer, you actually realize that it's a very different ballgame. It's an entirely different way of learning, and it's an entirely different way of taking in information, because knowing of something requires very shallow exposure. Essentially, you can kind of just open up a book. Someone's obviously asking you to do that in the first place. So someone tells you what to do, you go ahead, and 3 minutes before the test is due, you kind of do what they told you, but 20% of it, that's how much you engage with it. You give it back to that person. They say you've learned it. Cool, we're done here. Can I just go now, please? Can I go do something else? This is kind of the picture of learning that we get. And building a skill it requires so much more depth than what we've had to do before. And because we haven't done that, I think there's a huge component of discomfort, because in order to build skill, you actually have to do stuff that you are horrible at, that you stay pretty bad at for quite a while. You don't see any improvement, and you also don't get any feedback because you've never done this before. No exposure, you haven't seen it happen before. You haven't seen that from sucking you improve by 1% after, let's say, a couple weeks, and then another 1% after another couple weeks, and on and on and on. But if you've never seen that improvement before, if you don't even know that it's supposed to happen, and if you don't know that your brain is geared to work in that way, then you might just revert back to more knowing of things, more information. I'm probably missing something. I'm not doing something right. So I should go and I should get 10 more books, watch 50 plus thousand more tutorials, get more exposure to info, rather than I need to practice more. I need to do more of the right things, rather than find more things for me to see and kind of pick which one is supposed to work, try it, fail, pick another thing, try it, fail, etc. It's always going to be try it and fail until you encode the actions that are surrounding that one thing. It's a pretty complex topic. It's a complex subject. I'm recording this video for at least the 7th time right now, and I'm not sure if you'll see this as the final. So let me talk to you a little bit about the brain first. This is where we'll start, and I'll talk to you a little bit how that translates into building skill, and specifically into art skills. So we have what's called a triune brain. It means we essentially have 3 brains. We have the neocortex, that's our smart brain, that's what makes us human. Then you have the mammalian brain, which is what we share with dogs and other things that we like, because they're very much like us, just without the extra parts that either make us neurotic, smart, or whatever it is you would like to think that makes us human. And then we also have the reptilian brain, which is the part of the brain that will make you run away from a dark alley without saying anything to your friends and throwing all your groceries everywhere. And then later on, when they found you cowering somewhere behind a trash can and they ask you, hey, what happened? And you say you thought you just saw a mouse somewhere, because when you were small, there was a mouse and it really scared you, and forever on afterwards, you react before you can think. That's the reptilian brain. It's why reptiles aren't very friendly towards us. You go and try and pet a lizard of any sort, and they'll just run away or bite you or tear their tail off and do whatever lizards do, right? Each and every one of those, and I'm no expert, so do your research, but each and every one of those comes with its trade-offs, basically. It comes with benefits, definitely, and they work together best in us because we have all three. So the neocortex, the new brain, what we can do with that is we can be creative, we can problem solve, we can learn new info. One thing about it is that it's very slow. Compared to the other parts of the brain, it's insanely slow. The reptilian and mammalian brain are times faster, not just a couple times. It's a huge, insane gap that exists between the neocortex and those brains. The neocortex is kind of like 138-year-old grandpa in a wheelchair in a sprint versus Usain Bolt or whoever the fastest human is right now with a jetpack. So that's basically the comparison between the two. There was an image that I remember seeing in a book quite a while ago. It was in one of the books I've read about the brain, and it basically had this huge black field with one tiny little speck of white inside of it. And if you've watched Carl Sagan or know his work, the pale blue dot thing where he says this is the universe, this is us, and it's like this super tiny microscopic little dot on this huge array of black. This is the same comparison for the unconscious versus conscious processing power of the brain. Basically, knowing of things, where we started this video, knowing of stuff and just having a diagrammatic representation in your brain is almost like having to think of what the right word is for every single word. It's just inefficient. It doesn't work for any high-level skill. It couldn't work. It's too slow. But that's the part of the brain that you need to use if you're trying to acquire more words. So if you remember learning language at some point in your life, then acquiring words is very slow. You're just trying to memorize one at a time. It takes time to encode each and every one of those. It's a very laborious process. But then speaking, after you've practiced them enough, after you have enough words, speaking is automatic. And that's really the difference between using the neocortex and the basal ganglia, for instance. That's the area where knowledge gets offloaded as habit. It's once things become automatic, it just gets offloaded down into the reptilian brain and it becomes insanely fast. So book learning and what we've been taught is learning is essentially just step one. It's kind of like just, hey, here's a word, here's another word, but you're never shown how to take those words, really integrate them into your brain, into your being, make them a part of you. That's essentially when something becomes a skill, is when it becomes a part of you. You can't even explain how you do it. I couldn't tell you how I'm speaking right now. I have no idea how it's happening. I can just do it. At some point though, and it actually did happen when I started speaking in English, I couldn't speak. I wasn't fast enough. I hadn't spoken in English before. So I knew a lot of words and I'd read a lot, but I couldn't speak fast enough. I would miss stuff. So like when something happens, I have a joke to say or something. 10 minutes later, I can say the joke now, but it's over. It's gone. It's not fast enough. Any high-level performance requires that deep integration of knowledge compressed by practice into skill. Each and every repetition of something that you do, whether it's an action or if it's a thought, you're essentially building a habit. You're reinforcing pathways in your brain. You're also myelinating those pathways, which means they get faster. They become much faster. So each and everything that you repeatedly expose yourself to or participate in or make or do take action on, you are essentially making faster. So when you start out and you completely suck at absolutely everything, you have to realize that no amount of intellectual information is going to help you overcome that sucking. Now, intellectual info is important. Knowledge is vastly important. It's the difference between doing something continuously wrong and finding the right way to do it. It's huge. But knowing the right way to do it, which in our time right now is a lot easier because you have so many experts sharing everything that they do. But I'm sure you know that once someone tells you exactly what they do, The only thing that you can say, really, that's all that there is to it. There's no, where's the magic part? How come I can do the same thing? It doesn't work for me and it works for you. And it works for them because they've encoded it. They've sped it up to such a degree that they get 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times better result than we would get. It's faster. It's also connected, not only to just one thing, but they have 1,000 pieces of the surrounding jigsaw puzzle that are also in place. This is called mental representations. Mental representations essentially means that once you solve a problem, and you may have to solve the same problem several times to encode it more deeply, once you solve a problem, it goes, if it's trained, right? I just want to make this point that once you solve a problem and you train that solution, as we've said, once it goes to the basal ganglia, you kind of have that as a stored solution. So the next time, let's say, if you're drawing a figure, then you draw just a part of it. You draw just a part of it. And you do that and you practice it over several days. Next time, you practice another part. And you do that several times as well. Now you kind of have two pieces. Then third, you can practice those two pieces together. Okay, cool. Then you add another piece. Then you add another piece. And you practice those separately. You practice them together and you integrate them all the time. So you're not just practicing in isolation, you're constantly integrating. At some point, now you have a solution for 2, 3, 4 pieces. So next time when you do a new figure, you're not solving all the problems simultaneously. You're solving things with a huge advantage in speed with the problems that you've already solved, and you can now focus on a new problem, which is essentially all that's happening behind the scenes with every single skill that you improve. You will be good at certain parts of it, and certain things will be new. But the more mental representations you get, the more solutions to problems you encode, the more deeper the vault that you are kind of drawing upon as you're problem solving. If you've seen some high-level artists practice or just draw or sketch and something amazing comes out and they don't need to have an initial idea or anything prepared, it happens because they have thousands and thousands and thousands of potential solutions. I remember this thing from years ago when I was watching Feng Zhu paint, and he would just say, oh, there's no mistakes. He would just essentially drop paint all over the place and just make what would seem to me random brushstrokes. And he would just like shake it off like, yeah, I made a mistake over here. I don't care. There's no mistakes. It's whatever. And just keep going. Because to his brain and to his level of training, anything can be converted to anything else. To my level of training at that time, though, almost everything was a mistake because I didn't know how to incorporate it into anything else. The experience for the master is truly different from the experience of the beginner because they're literally just drawing from thousands and thousands of options and they can select any one. Whereas I, as a beginner, had just 1, 2, 3 options, and that wasn't enough to get myself out of anything that I might put myself into. If I do a line, I can't convert it into something that would then be interesting. I would either have to have a clear idea of what that line is or fail. Those are pretty much the two options. I just didn't have enough mental representations to be able to pull it off, essentially. So book learning is a very linear representation of information. It gives you an idea of something, but it really doesn't translate and will never translate into skill. Knowledge is something that you can transform into skill through exposure over time and practice, and then essentially what it looks like is practice, journaling, figuring out what you did right, what you did wrong, what could be done better, and then let's say 5-10% knowledge of, hey, let me see how this person does it. Okay, that's cool. Now let me go and practice that. Hey, I did a little bit better, but I'm missing something. Let me go look at that person again. Okay, cool. So I missed that the first time I watched it. Now I have more mental reps. Now I can go in there and have a look. Okay, so you're doing it like this? Cool, I missed that as well. I constantly rewatch the same things that I've seen before because I get more and more depth the more that I improve. I realize that it's very difficult to give a clear-cut approach to what to do and how to do, but really what I'm trying primarily to do is to just let you know, don't be biased towards more info. Be biased towards more action. You can, that's the danger, is that you can forever repeat the wrong things, let's say, and never get any better. But info in and of itself will never translate into skill. So someone that's drawn a figure 10,000 times with no knowledge of anatomy, they'll probably make the same mistakes, but they'll be much faster and more accurate than someone who's drawn the figure, let's say, 10 times. Now take someone who has knowledge of anatomy, who's taken a couple courses, which let's say amounts to a total of 20, 40 hours, and they've done 5,000 figure drawings, which let's say in proportion amounts to like, let's say they spent about 1,000 hours on figure drawing. Let's say they've spent 1,000 hours on figure drawing and they've spent 50 hours, 100 hours maybe. That's probably a bit high. Let's say 50 hours on knowledge of anatomy and 1,000 hours of figure drawing, of studying gesture, of figuring out proportion, of realizing their common mistakes, making things too small or too big, etc., etc., etc. That person with the 5,000 plus the 50 will most likely outperform the 10,000. So there is definitely a coupling, but really, primarily, what I'm concerned with is that we all are way more biased towards intellectual learning. And because it's easier as well. Not only are we trained, but it's easy. Hey, I'll just buy a tutorial. Hey, I'll watch another thing. Hey, look at this guy doing it. Hey, look at that guy doing it. That guy does it different. Which one is right? Which one should I do? Is it this one or that one? I don't get it. I don't know. I'll get another one. Oh, that guy does it in a new way as well. I am like that. I do that too, constantly. It would be so much easier if I could just read a book and get it. But practice and action and daily exposure to the same things and trying to just do it a little bit better, 1% better, 1% better, 1% better. And coding, doing it again, myelinating, mental representations, getting faster, basal ganglia, turning into habits. That's what skill is. It's essentially deliberate thinking combined with knowledge, compressed through action, and done again and again and again and again. The same way that an athlete would train is how we have to train. We're mental athletes. A lot of people start in art because they think it's easier, at least during school years. Hey, art it's the one thing I like. I don't like anything else. But art is just as much a grind and just as much info and science and practice and suffering through stuff as really anything else. So if you want to get good, train like an athlete. Okay. Thank you for bearing with me through this video. The initial idea was to make a 10-minute vid. No chance of that happening, I don't think. I really think it needed some more time to expand. Hopefully, you got some value from this. If you have, then you can support the channel in a very easy way. Just subscribe or just like the videos. It helps with the ranking. It also helps me when I can see that people are engaging, that they're getting something from it, and I'm just not throwing stuff out in the black void of the internet. So if you like this, please subscribe, please like, please share. If you find something, any one of the videos that you think someone might benefit from, please share it with them. It's what brings people to the channel. It's what makes it grow. It's what makes me better by getting more people giving me feedback. You can find me on Facebook. I'm actually closing down the page, so just friend me or follow on the profile. You can find me on Instagram. I'm posting more, doing daily studies right now. I'm also on ArtStation. I'm going to start doing some daily stuff on there as well. DeviantArt, not so much, but I am posting every day, but I just don't keep up with it. There's too many places, trying to keep it simple so I can get more of that practice in there. Please let me know what's most useful to you. Please give me feedback on the videos. Thank you so much for sticking with, and I hope this helped. Now go get it. Go get that myelination. Thank you.